Hey everyone, it's Chelsea from the Allen County Public Library, and for this In Stitches video, I'm going to be showing you how to do a purl stitch. Now, in my previous videos, I've showed you how to do a cast on and a knit stitch, and while the purl stitch might be a little intimidating to some people, it's not that difficult if you have done your knit stitch. So it's basically just the reverse of a knit stitch. So to get started, you'll need your knitting needles and your yarn, and for this video I've again gone ahead and put on 10 stitches. So let's get started. Alright, so to get started we're going to do the same thing that we did in our last knit video. You're going to have your stitches put on your needle, and you're going to go ahead and wrap your thread however feels comfortable to you, but this is how I usually do it. And we're going to get started. So the difference in the purl stitch from the knit stitch is going to be the placement of your yarn, and that is going to be in the front. We usually start a knit stitch with the yarn back here, but with purl the yarn goes in front. Another difference is when we do a knit stitch we usually go from front to back, but with a purl stitch you go from back to front. This first stitch is a little tight. Don't want to split it again this time. There we go. Okay, so the difference, as you can see here, is I have my yarn in the front and I've gone from the back to the front. This needle's now in the front. So we're going to wrap our yarn around, similar to how we do our knit stitch. And you're also going to just push that needle through, catch the loop on the way around, and then slide that stitch off. So it's very similar to the knit stitch. There's very few differences in how you do this, but it just takes some practice like you do with your knit stitch. So we're again going to go from the back to the front. We're going to throw that yarn around the needle. I'm going to push it through and slide it off. All right. Again, with our thread in the front, we're going to insert our needle from the back to the front. Wrap that yarn around. Use our thumb to help push it through and slide that stitch off. Now, if you've been doing a lot of your knitting and practicing that knit stitch, you might be tempted to bring it back. I know I'm fighting that urge right now to throw the yarn back and do a knit stitch, but it's important to keep that in front. If you are new to it or have been doing a lot of knitting, you will have that temptation, but it's important to keep reminding yourself this is a purl stitch and keep that yarn in the front, or else you'll have to backtrack and fix a mistake. Okay, again we'll go back to front, throw it around, push that needle through while catching the loop. You can see there's that loop in the back, and then pushing our old stitch off. We're about halfway done with this. I'm going to go slow so you can kind of keep watching me. Now, if you were going to do a scarf, say, and you started doing purl stitches, if you did a purl stitch the whole way, every time you would turn your work back around and just did purl stitches, it would look exactly the same as if you did every row with knit stitches. And I'll show you an example when we get done with this row. Oh, look at what I just did. I tried to do a knit stitch. Gotta catch myself sometimes. Keep that yarn up front. You may say, why do you leave these mistakes in your videos? But these are common mistakes, and I want you to see that even as an experienced knitter, I sometimes make these mistakes myself. And it's important to catch yourself and give yourself grace when you are learning something new. So, and here's our last stitch. Again, yarn is in the front. We're going from back to front, throwing the yarn and pushing the needle through and sliding that stitch off. so if I was doing a knit stitch, we wouldn't have these bumps. This is how you can tell that you've done purl stitches. They've got these bumps. On this other side, let me turn it around. You can see that this is what a knit stitch would look like if we'd been knitting. But since we've been purling, we have that little bump. And that is how you can tell. If you were to stop paying attention, say you're watching TV, if you look back and you see that you don't have these bumps, that can indicate that you've made a mistake. Maybe you accidentally did a knit stitch when you needed to do a purl stitch, or I mean, vice versa. If you were supposed to do a purl stitch and you accidentally did a knit stitch, that is how you can tell. So you should have these nice little bumps under your stitches. And that's the purl stitch. All right, so that is how you do a purl stitch. Now earlier in this video, I told you that if you were to purl every row, you would get the same effect as if you knitted every row. And we showed you this in this last video of knitting, that you would make a garter stitch that way. But in all of my years of knitting, I've never seen a pattern call for you to purl every row to get the garter stitch. They usually want you to knit. But I just wanted you to see that if you were to continue to purl every row, you would get this same look. Okay, but now that you know how to knit and purl, you can now do the stockinette stitch, and that is this right here, and it's what you see in most sweaters. A lot of them use this pattern. It's got a nice uniform look. It looks like a knit stitch every row, but you actually do a knit row, a purl row, a knit row, and a purl row, and you get this nice flat look. And on the back side, they look like all purls, but they're actually, you're just switching back between a knit and a purl row, and that's how you get this look on the back and this nice uniform look on the front. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.